Alright, so today I want to do a more comprehensive look at the dark face bug in Skyrim. So anyone that's modded the game has probably seen something like this or this before. Um, it's especially when doing a lot of NPC overhauls, it's easily one of the most common issues you run into. And the main reason for that is there's so many things that can cause it. Usually it's not too hard to resolve, especially on named NPCs, because they're a lot easier to figure out. Um, on random NPCs, it's a little more difficult sometimes, but kind of going to go through the basics of what to check, um, and then a couple more advanced things to look at. The first thing is really just understanding how the game loads NPC faces. So, a basic NPC mod, overhaul mod, is going to have three main components. So, it's going to have, uh, you're going to have meshes, textures, and a plugin. And then your meshes, you're going to have actors, character, face gen data. So, face gen, face geom, and then you're going to have folders corresponding usually to the base game's plugins if it's replacer. Um, so Skyrim.esm, and then you have all your face gen nifs. So these meshes, these uh, alphanumeric things here is basically their base ID. So when you're dealing with named NPCs, it's very easy to find their base ID. I'll go through that in a little bit. Um, and you can track it down and kind of find out what's going on. So you have your NIF here, and then you're going to have your face tint, which is your texture. That's going to have like face paint and stuff. So it's in the same thing, face gen data, but this one is face tint, and then same thing in these folders. And this base ID is going to match with the corresponding face gen NIF. Um, and then you have your plugin. So it's important that your ordering is right. So if you know you have a mod, like I use the Babes of Skyrim one here, but I have several others, so 238. I have several other mods that affect similar NPCs. So you have to know which ones you want to take precedence, so make sure they're at the end so I know bijin ones, I want to take precedence over all of them, so that's at the bottom, and then Pandorable above that, and then so on. It has to be in the right order, not only in your mods pane here, but it has to be in order in your plugins pane here. So if you're looking through your, actually it's going to be your all-in-one, so that one. So this order has to match this order for these. Um, so you just, I mean, if you have no clue, then I would just use one like main thing, like the Babes one or Wicco or something. But if you're using a bunch like I am, you just got to know that some of these are going to have overlap and you have to know the ordering. Another important thing is having them all in loose format as opposed to having a BSA file. I like using BSA browser, it's the easiest one to use. Most NPC overhauls come in loose format, and loose format just means that it's meshes and textures. There's no BSA. So if I look at like this one, it's got its BSA file. So if you once you install BSA browser, it'll associate with the BSA files. You can just double click them and it'll show all the files in there. You would just go extract folders and then just double check, make sure it's actually putting it in this folder because sometimes it'll default somewhere else. So you could just copy and paste that in here if it didn't have the right one. Um, I didn't actually copy it. But anyway, you get the point. So you would just extract it into here and you would delete the BSA afterwards because it would put the meshes and textures in here. Yeah, so the reason is BSA files load before loose files. So even if you have all your ordering right, you had all this set up right, and you had all that set up right, if one of them, like say Pandorable had a BSA, it would load before Babes, but the plugin that's telling the game what attributes to give to the NPC is loaded after. So that's where the mix match happens. And basically the game doesn't know what to do because it's looking for information that this plugin is telling it, but the files that loaded are from this one. And so it just throws up the dark face. And that's kind of how it normally happens. There's occasions where it's a corrupted actual face gen NIF, but it's pretty rare. It's usually a mismatch of the game's looking for, the plugin is telling the game, hey, load these parameters, this hair, this whatever, but the actual the actual file that it's loading is not the right one because the ordering is off. So that's the basic or the basis of what causes it. The issue is finding out exactly what in your order is causing it because a lot of times it's not actually NPC overhauls. Many mods affect NPCs. So you kind of have to, there's different ways you can do it, but I'm going to go through the easiest ways. Obviously, first thing, make sure everything's in order. Now, everything might be in order and you're still getting the blackface. So what you want to do is, all right, we'll start with some examples. So we'll start with the easiest is going to be a named NPC. So any NPC that has an actual name, like not just Imperial Soldier or something, but so we'll do Holda here. Um, so you go play the game, Holda has a blackface. So you can go to this site, enuesp.net, and search Holda. It'll bring up here. So you want to find the base ID. So right here is her base ID. Now this is going to be the number that's going to be the same exact thing as her NIF and so her face gen file and the face tint file will have that associated with it. So you would think you could just go here and look at conflicts and see what else is overriding. The issue with that is not every mod uses the main game's ESMs. What I mean by that is, so if you go in here and I showed before, you go to actors, character, you're looking at your face gen data in the Skyrim ESM here. Some mods, and I hate when mods do this, but even if they're doing a replacer, they will put the face gen data in their own plugin name. So you could have the same mesh here and here, but it won't show up here as you have no kind of conflict here because it's looking in a different folder. But when it actually loads in the game, it's going to be loading this file. So if you had this immersive weapons integration, if this was in loose format like it is, and this was below Pandorable, but then you had immersive weapons integration. If you had the actual plugin above Pandorable, then you get the blackface. So what you can do is go to your mods, your main mods folder here. So you got all your mods here, and you're gonna search for that NIF. So right here, it's gonna go through, search all your mods. I like the details. So you can see here I have 5 different mods that have face gen data for Holda. So Bijin, Babes, Botox, the Bijin all-in-one, and the immersive integration. So, and you can see here the folders they're in, the Skyrim.esm, Skyrim.esm, these will all show up in Mod Organizer as conflicts here. This one will not. So that's important when you're trying to find them and you're trying to order correctly, is sometimes mods will have them in different folders, and then you're trying to find, you think you have everything in order, but then this one has it and this one's below one of the ones you want, but you actually wanted this mod to load the face, so you have to kind of change your ordering around based on that. That's usually the reason why people have issues with named NPCs. The other issue is it might not even have face gen data. It might just change the NPC's record. And the only way you're going to really tell that is you got to use Xedit. So you're going to fire up Xedit. Okay. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do it with Holda. So mod list load. Okay. Okay, so you're going to go to your form ID and you'll paste that in there. So it's going to find her record, and then it's going to show all the mods that could affect it. So now specifically with her, AI overhaul, if we had this one after Bijin, we would get a dark face issue. So, because if you look down here, this one, when we looked at the NIFs, there's no NIF created for that character because this assumes it's the mod was built based on vanilla. So you have to make patches for any NPC overhauls. So if you go down to all the face information, it's all the vanilla information. It doesn't have any of the face information from Bijin. So the only way you'd know that is if you actually came in here and searched for the record. So that's the other main way to find conflicts, is searching for the record. Now, I talked about in my other video deleting the conflicts. It's not usually necessary. The main reason you'd want to do it is when doing things like Mater Smash and things like patches, because it doesn't really handle combining mods efficiently when you have a ton of different mods that affect the same file. So I could run Mater Smash and it might grab, the face information from this one, not this one. It just depends. So to avoid that, you can go to the immersive integration and remove that record. If you wanted to jump right to that record, you can control left click on any of these and it'll go to the record in that mod, and you'll see it'll come up red. And so if I didn't want that, I could delete it, remove it. I do my own patches, so I don't really have to worry about doing that. So, But that's another option, but you kind of have to know what you're doing because if I just went through and deleted all the conflicts for AI overhaul, for example, then you basically aren't have no purpose using that mod because you kind of have to patch these new packages into the mod, but that's a whole nother topic. So normally you don't need to delete conflicts like that unless you're running a program like Mater Smash. But if you just look at the records and see what's happening, just make sure that whatever you want loaded is the last one. So in Xedit, it's going to be the one all the way to the right, matches the ordering of whatever you're going to have loading. So that's basically how you would find a named NPC. You'd get their base ID. You can check the mod files real quickly by searching, and then if you can't figure it out from there, you come into Xedit, search for the form ID, and find out if another mod is conflicting with it. Now, there's some mods that just have random edits to NPCs, and maybe you just don't want, you don't care if that mod edits that NPC, you can just delete that record. But it's another thing you kind of have to know what the mod does if you're going to start doing that. So the easiest thing is just making sure everything's in order and going through the record and looking. So all right, so the next thing I want to talk about is unnamed NPCs. Now, this is a little more tricky because unnamed NPCs don't have their base ID is kind of harder to find because you can't just look at them and say, oh, that's, because they're just going to have a generic name like Imperial Soldier or something. The base ID is going to differ. So to find that in game can be a little tricky too, but generally what you can do is when you're in game, you hit the um, tilde key to bring up your console, and then on the mirror screen, you'll just click on the NPC, and then it should give you an ID, and you should be able to search for that ID in here, and you might be able to find it. Sometimes it's tricky to actually select an NPC from console in VR. It seems like the position of where your mouse cursor is doesn't really line up right. So usually I'll click on the NPC and then it'll give you a number and type INV for inventory and hit enter. And it should bring up an inventory. And if it does, you're probably on the right one. If nothing pops up, you're probably on like a tree or something, or I don't know, just something random, like it can pick up clouds and stuff. So but once you get the ID, the thing will be, or the process will be the same. You'd search for it and find out what mods are affecting that specific base ID, and then you go through the same thing, make sure your ordering's right, um, and all that. So say you do all that and you can't, and it's still not working. You have two other options that you can kind of go through. Actually, before I go through the two options, if you're using Mod Organizer 2, make sure you have all the dependencies for that mod. So it's one thing about Mod Organizer 2 that a lot of people might not notice, but when you have a missing dependency, so I'll take that away, it's not always very noticeable to people. So that's what that symbol means. That means it's missing a master file that it needs to work properly. Um, It'll also show up here. I had to refresh that, but it'll show up here as a 2. If you click on that, it'll say missing masters, and it'll tell you. See, the thing is, it tells you the master, but it doesn't tell you which ones are affecting it. So you have to go and look for this right here. And the thing with Mod Organizer 2, sometimes it'll let you still launch the game even with missing masters. So that can confuse people if you're not paying attention to this up here. So make sure you have all dependencies. I've seen many times where people are missing the hair mods required, and if you're if you're missing a hair mod and the mod requires, the hair mod, then obviously when it goes to load that, it's not going to have the files it needs. You're going to get the dark face. So that's the other important aspect, is just making sure you have um, everything that NPC overhaul needs. So when you're looking at NPC overhauls, make sure you look at the required. And this is for any uh, any mod. Make sure you're always looking at the requirements. Because if you're not looking at the requirements, you're gonna have issues. So okay, so we got that. So the other ways to resolve this is uh, through creation kit and setting the NPC weight. Now the NPC weight thing is just kind of a workaround if you're getting like one of those random NPCs you cannot figure out and you just want their face to go back to their normal color. You can change their weight and it works. Basically all it is you select the NPC in game with the console like I was just talking about. You hit the tilde key and you type in set NPC weight space 100 and hit enter. And their face will go back to normal color. The problem with that is it doesn't have proper face tint. It's just kind of a workaround, I guess, but it's not really a solution. But if it's just like one random NPC, like a random guard, and and you can't figure it out, and you just want his color back, then you can do that. So the last one I wanted to talk about is creation kit. So to get the creation kit, you have to have the Bethesda launcher. You get the Bethesda launcher, you go here to creation kit. It should say something like requires PC version of special edition. You should have an install here. So when you install it, you want to put it in your base Skyrim VR install, wherever that's installed. In Mod Organizer 2, you have to add it as we're at creation kit. You have to add it as a new executable here, and then you also want to go and get creation kit fixes. So this guy. Without this, creation kit's extremely slow. This makes it so much faster. With this, you just manually download it, extract the files, and then you'll unzip them into here, and you'll overwrite. It'll have like 4 files. You overwrite the ones that are in there. All right, so let's say we're having an issue with some NPCs in immersive patrols. You narrowed it down to an NPC in immersive patrols. Your ordering seems right, but you still can't figure out. He still has a dark face. So we'll go here. Excuse me. And we're gonna create new face gen for him. So go here into your creation kit. Let me reactivate this before I forget. Oh, did I? Yeah, I already did. Okay. So start the creation kit. And you have to do it like this with MO2 or it won't load your mod list, like everything. Okay, so once it loads, and it's pretty much instant when you get creation kit fixes. If you don't have fixes, it takes like a minute or two. You're going to go here to open file, double click your ESM here, and then you go through your list here and find whichever plugin for whatever mod that you're having the issue with. hit set as active. Click OK. So it's going to load load the mod. This can take a couple minutes depending on how big the mod is. The log up here is going to have all kinds of errors and random stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that. So let that load here. All right. We'll also go here. Actually, I'll wait till this loads up. All right. So once it's loaded, you're in your object window here. The very top is going to be actors. So you're actually going to the third one down, actor. You're going to sort it by form ID. So just click on form ID. Now, if you look, all the ones with asterisks are actors or NPCs for this mod that this mod changes. Anything without it, it's just the generic ones from the base game. So when you're looking at these, the ones that actually have face gen info are going to have a race attached to it. So all these down here. So let's say you find one and okay, another issue is going to sounds complicated, but it's really not that bad. But another issue is sometimes the base ID, it's only the last numbers for this are going to match. Because when a mod creates new versions, I'll show you here. So let's say we had an issue with this guy right here. Now looking at this, it's 60 D2A. If I look in here, it's actually going to be 40. You're just looking for the last couple here. So what did I say? D2A. D2, D2A. So that's going to be that guy. So basically, we're assuming that we went through, we got his ID on console. We came through, we found it was that one. We're going to make new face gen. So to do that, you select that NPC, you hold control, and while you're holding control, hit F4. It's going to say export face gen for all selected NPCs. Hit yes. Now, for one NPC, this doesn't take very long. If you do a whole bunch of them, it can take a while. I did like 100 once, and it took like all freaking day. So it just depends. I don't know. I've talked to other people that say they can do like 100 NPCs in like 20 minutes. I don't know if it's just my creation kit, but mine's never that fast. So it's generating new face gen, and when it's done, it'll say done. Now, once you're done, you click OK. It's important you save the plugin. So you go up here, hit save. Now, if you look down here, it's going to say saving done. Once that's done, you're done. So go ahead and close out. Now, sometimes Creation Kit doesn't like to close, or it takes forever to close. So you can hit it a couple times, and then if this comes up, just close it, cancel, and then it closes out. So now if we refresh this, we can see our D2A has new face gen created, and it was just created at this time. And it should just overwrite the one that was already there. Now if you go into your overwrite folder, you might get a textures here. You might get this TGA. The game doesn't use these, so you can just delete it. Overwrite textures, delete. Okay, so now if you wanted to double check, now I mean normally you would just go in game and check it out. You can You can look at these in NIF scope if you want to, but just because it shows up right in NIF scope doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in game. Um, but if you had like a corrupted one, like I mentioned before, which is very rare, and if you go in here and look at it, it's going to be all screwed up. So looking at him, he looks normal. But yeah, so that's basically it. Those are the main ways to resolve it, main ways to find out what is causing it. The number one thing is just your ordering, making sure everything's lined up how you want it, how it's supposed to be, and no other mods are affecting that specific NIF file there or your face tin or anything like that. So hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.